Roadside service with Waptek. Whisper quiet. Camera DVR Remaiten. The specific spelling there is very important. Carna botnet. DDoS TCP ACK PSH and SYN SYN. And then IoT data. BusyBox BASHLITE and 2013. The Internet of Things, the internet working of physical devices, vehicles, buildings, anything embedded with electronics, software, sensors, actuators, and network connectivity that enables these objects to collect and exchange data. That's pretty much the entire video. Thank you very much for watching. Have a good day. Now there's going to be a playlist below of other people explaining this problem since 2013. But all of a sudden, someone's aware of it who's supposed to be running a software firm. Now, I'm not criticizing that person, it's just that I think it's kind of funny that... Anyway, have you ever seen that map of the internet? You know, that one that looks like an exploding snowflake on acid with cotton candy everywhere? There's another version of it that's sometimes called the Internet Census of 2012. Images will be listed below. My favorite one is actually listed on the Wikipedia page for Carna botnet geo video, and it's called low res, and it's an animated GIF showing you over a 24-hour period how much activity there is on the internet. Now, in order to do that, basically their little project back in 2012 and 2013 had to measure how much activity was on the computers they were looking at by breaking into them. Now, I'm going to list a few things here. The Internet of Things is a Wikipedia page. OVH controversies for OVH, which is the entity that brought this up recently. You might want to look that up. And why they're getting attacked. Next. Yes, WikiLeaks is related. Then Carna botnet itself. And then the Internet Census itself, and then that image. Now, there are two archives in there that have actual stories in them, but the playlist is most useful because it's people basically explaining this, sometimes for the purpose of getting money. Yeah, they want you to visit some website, and they had you fill out surveys for money, and anyway, just watch the videos. Now, what is this about? Digital video recorders, cameras, security cameras, ironically as hell, webcams, anything that has the following characteristics. It's a device that does something. My headphones do something. But, in case you're not aware of it, right here is the microphone part with a little button that's built into you squeeze. What is in that? The electrical parts that make the microphone work. Because there's a fourth line connection here. The one at the absolute back end of it is ground. The third one, the extra one, is the microphone line, which carries a DC charge, and it picks up audio as a variation on top of that DC charge. It doesn't go up and down below zero, it hovers up here, which means it's usually noiseless. It's a tiny microphone, and there's a little switch that shuts off the mic effectively, and or shunts it in such a way that it acts as a signal back in. This is sometimes called data over power line, or other things. I'll include links for that as well. Now, what is this important about? A lot of you have these things. No, they're not spying on you. But a lot of you have these things that are programmable through your cell phone to do other things, such as change volume level, act as a noise killer with an extra microphone, or use your earphones as a bad microphone in order to detect any sound in the area when you're talking to try to gauge the noise level. That means inside of there's a very tiny, very simplified computer. And it might be an analog computer, which is really hard to hack because most likely impossible. It might have a firmware computer, which means it does not have the ability to be reprogrammed unless you manually go out of your way to do so. Or it could have a half firmware, which means it can update itself. Update. Now let's talk about all those devices. I'll also include a link below where you can look up unprotected video cameras, some of which you're allowed to move the lens back and forth, refocus it, and zoom in and out. Obviously, if you're able to remote control them through a web interface and look at stuff, that means it's running a computer routine. That means it's running software to make a web interface. That means that at that moment, when you look at it, it is the same, flat out, no real differences on a hypothetical level here between looking at Google's website. All the power of any website can be put on one of these things, which means all the power of any computer, any virus, malware, software hacking, anything you want to do. Now let's talk about your security cam you bought last year that's got infrared LEDs on it, and to do the setup to change its timing and make it adapt, it had you communicate with it. Instead of communicating with a box over here on your table, these things usually run as little Wi-Fi boxes and have a power line, because it eliminates a bunch of stuff that breaks, power wires. The wire comes out of the camera, goes underneath the eave of your house, and then you plug it into a power connector, and there's no data connection there. I mean, you could have a data connection, data over power line, by running it over like the microphone works on your microphone. Instead, they make it a Wi-Fi enabled, fully Wi-Fi enabled, little tiny internet service provider box, a lot like a cell phone site. What could possibly go wrong? Well, because these things usually run Linux, nothing. Unless somebody writes a bot routine to attack that very easily. So, besides the Carna botnet from a while ago, Remaiten, I'm pronouncing it on purpose the wrong way, because if you pronounce it the right way, you'll get the wrong spelling. It's a weird spelling for a word that actually exists. And other bot routines or activities or projects or botnets exist that break in using the software in this hardware. Yes, your refrigerator can have this. Yes, a smart power meter may not be able to be broken into because someone thought to be somewhat, actually no, it's not secure at all. What about the stuff on your data over power lines in your house that communicate with your smart? Yeah, they can be broken into too. Well, it runs Linux, it's impervious. No, it's not, because it's ubiquitous now. There are hundreds of thousands or millions of pieces of equipment like this that exist. Actually, it's millions. They can be anything from your sprinkler controller, your, again, security cameras. How about that dash cam you have? How about police officer body cams? Yeah. You see, you can implement most things now in firmware or electronic hardware, which is literally electronics, you know, like an AM radio. But it's easier to make a programmable system because computers run so fast that a computer can make a decision by running 50 or 60,000 processes during the time it takes to write 1 pixel on my screen to do this image. That means you can have on-the-fly things like you point your cell phone at the ground and you see a Pokemon. That same technology that does the overlay, that does it accurately with perspective functions, as accurately as it needs to, or even more accurately with some of the apps that you can get, even a Haagen-Dazs app, yeah, there is one, that puts a hologram in that looks realistic on your cell phone. These routines don't require a huge amount of horsepower, and they can operate very fast. Even if the computer's stupid, a 1-bit, yes, they do exist, a 1-bit computer can run a program. It just has to run really fast to get anything useful done. They do. A while back, most of you might have noticed that most computers are limited to under 3 gigahertz processing speed because there's some mechanical limits on how to make a microchip these days. So they just make more computer chips in the same space, which means that the industry now has, as a default, insanely high-density electronics that are just barely visible when you pick them up. Making them smaller isn't practical because it makes it harder to make them and maneuver them and put them into packaging, but they can do that. So, in this space, yes, there's a page about this. Someone built a set of headphones like this, actually hundreds of them, and put them at a store. Yeah, it was the DEA. Anyway, a bunch of guys come along and they want their fashion headphones with a little microphone in. It wasn't a little microphone. It used electricity coming out of the cell phone to power it as a bug, because it's a bug. The electronics to make that an analog bug are, if you want to, 2 transistors, a couple of capacitors, and resistors. It's not that damn complicated. The hardest thing is the coil wire, and there's a standardized way of getting around that. All it has to do is run in the microwave range, which means it was harder to detect bug. They didn't bother with that. They put a microcontroller, single-chip microcontroller in them, and had it record the person's activities. Not by dumping it into the cell phone, but because it had memory in it. It had about a 2 or 3 gigabyte memory area. It stored everything in low-res, low-quality audio, but it recorded it and then dumped it through the cell phone in a burst. Whenever the person was futzing around on text, it would send it out as an email, using the cell phone as a hijacked or botnetted computer. Okay? All right. And yes, it can communicate through the cabling, because a lot of cell phones have that data communication ability anyway. Yeah, I wonder that's why the Apple phones no longer have the socket. Anyway, no, they use an even more complicated socket. Did you know Bluetooth is easily broken into this way? Yeah, it's high encryption, that's nice, but it can break in. You can just walk up with a Bluetooth-enabled headset when someone's not looking, tell it to resync with this headset, leave it, set it under the table, and when they discover their headset doesn't work anymore, they just resync it, not knowing that underneath the table is a data recorder shaped like an earphone. Welcome to my world. So anyway, along with the video I posted before, I'm just going to be explicit about it, where I told people, yeah, you can just bust into these web-enabled cameras stuff. What about that? What about that weather cam? What about the weather measurement equipment? It detects temperature and stuff. That's fine. Well, what's dangerous about that? In order for it to log data, it had to load up some somewhat sophisticated software to make it to where it could log the data in a bundle for a day and then dump it to a computer, or store it up for a week if they chose to. It's a feature. Hey, you can upgrade your features. If you can upgrade or change a piece of hardware by clicking a button on a screen, that means it's software-enabled permissions. That means it's software-enabled updating. That means it can auto-update, or they may choose to make it to where you have to buy a new one a year later by saying, we're only going to license the software from our company until we sell our company to a big boy company. And then they'll invalidate it, kill it. Or that company will buy it and start tunneling into them. See? This has been worrying about for a long time. Anyway, the device type we're going to talk about here, I'm going to give you the keywords to look up if you want to look up the security issue with this, if you care. IoT, which stands for Internet of Things, being hacked by accessing its BusyBox routine. BusyBox is a piece of software that gives you a basic interface, a lot like DOS in some ways, to do things that actually access hardware and stuff. And mostly it's just a command line. And then using BASHLITE. I think it's called BASHLITE. Yeah, BASHLITE. Which could be light version of the born-again shell interface, command line interface, or a joke about flashlights. You can decide. It's significant that BASHLITE is only listed on security bulletin pages. There's no Wikipedia page explaining this. Not really. The Internet of Things is a glowing, fluffy term for your toaster needs an update. Because your toaster, instead of using a timer, can use a computer routine. Now I'm going to bring up why this is efficient, why it's overkill, and why it doesn't matter for the last part of this video, if you care. I have a flashlight I refuse to use because it doesn't just turn on and off. It has grayscale levels where it changes brightness levels, and it'll do an SOS or go into party mode, otherwise known as give me a convulsion mode. How does it do it? Microcontroller. Now, why do we use microcontrollers on flashlights for LEDs or anything? Because the push button wears out. It doesn't become reliable anymore, but it can turn on and off a digital signal. It just has to have the presence of a signal on and off, which means the worst case scenario if the switch goes bad is it'll occasionally turn on and then turn off again when it's not on. But if I push the on button, it will turn on. It does a debounce of the signal. That doesn't work in analog. Why is this overkill? Because of the extra features. Why it doesn't matter? The chip costs 1 penny for 500 of them, and it does work better than an actual switch. But you can hack into it, and an LED can transmit information in flashes of light. I know, I did that to one. The same one I smashed later because I got annoyed with it. It was programmable, and it was a flashlight. Thanks for watching. Have a good day. Good luck with that, and good luck